every year.
Oh,
Big cheese pizza.
this is the wrong chair. Sure. we can start.
Do you want, but you want to switch your chair?
No, I don't mind how much on the table. Taking that one outside my agenda.
Get ready. I look for you.
No, I have one somewhere. I have to find the one. Beth, would you run back and see if my agenda is still on the table on there? No, I got it, I got it. Okay. The board is back in open session. In accordance with Virginia Code 2.2-3712, I'm asking the Secretary of the Electoral Board to conduct a roll call vote to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge that one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were conducted in the closed meeting, and two, only such public businesses was identified in the motion for closed meeting by which the closed meeting was convened, was heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting of the Electoral Board. The roll call vote shall be recorded and included in the minutes of the Electoral Board. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Shapiro, do you concur with the motion? The statement, I should say?
Do you confirm?
I concur.
Ms.
And I
Hammond, do you
confirm, yes.
And I concur.
Okay, we now move on to the agenda for the approval of the minutes of, August 15th. You have them before you. Is there a motion?
Just quickly look at this.
Here you go.
Did you so move?
We haven't had a motion, I just want to.
So we're gonna have the discussion after we move, right?
Yes, we
Okay.
move and
So I
then
have
we'll
one
discuss.
Tiny question. Okay.
A
I-
tiny question. One,
So I would move that we adopt the minutes.
oh, wait a minute, I think they're his to
Oh,
some group.
never,
I'm
I
sorry.
withdraw the consent motion.
It's all right, we're pondering, we have a pause while we're pondering if there's a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Okay, well, I'm ready now.
Okay. You move to adopt the minutes?
I move that we adopt the minutes of August 15th.
Second.
All those in
Oh.
Discussion?
Discussion.
Oh, yes.
Did my one little correction make it in there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. We have before us the, list of election officer appointments for the 16th. Is there a motion?
I move that we, accept the list of election officers.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion that has been made and seconded to accept the list of election officers of 384 Democrats, 143 Republicans, and 168 unaffiliated. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Next item on the list is the General Registrar's report.
Thank you.
General Registrar.
Thank you. So on the first page, as always, we have the stats. May not seem like a lot of change, but Bushra and her voter registration team have really started to get very busy. Registrations are coming in. You see active went up about 5,000. The inactive went down a bit. Other than that, nothing really noteworthy. You go to page 2. More stats. We added a couple of, came up at the last board meeting, so we added a couple of categories down at the bottom, so please take a look at those. Any questions about the stats? You see quite a bit of activity from online from Elect 25,000 this past month. Things just started to get busy. On page 3, the polling place consolidation name change. We received the certificate of no objection from the Attorney General on August 20th. So we're going forward. We've sent out notices. So everything's going well on that. The next category, ballots for the November 24th election. In case you don't know, we did have one addition that slowed things up a bit. Cornell West was initially disqualified as a presidential candidate by the Department of Elections, and then he was added on Friday, September 7th. So we worked that evening, got a new ballot submitted with Mr. West on the ballot, and we got authorization for the ballot the next day, Saturday. So we moved forward, and are right now in the process of printing ballots. Next, sample ballot
How long
mailing.
is the ballot?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 17 inches long.
19.
It's 19.
19 inches long.
That's a
Something like that.
long ballot, folks.
19.
It'll,
But at one point, we were gonna have to do 4 different ballots, different
I know.
languages, so it's all.
so
one
it's
ballot.
19 inches, so for the satellites, those are all ballots on demand. They're gonna do a lot of watching and printing of ballots.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
And we've got plenty of ballot paper, 270,000 pieces of ballot paper for the satellites, which has the official seal and watermark. And the sample ballot mailing, that was also held up a bit because of the change in the ballot, but that's ready to go out, Cheryl, I think,
We hope this week.
this week.
We hope they've got everything.
Did we mention in it that you should be sure and check your voter registration?
Yes, it's big in the middle, you'll love it.
I love it. Good. I love to get mail I love.
This is our tagline for anybody that's listening, please check your voter registration. It's very important.
Go ahead.
Eric, a question about the sample ballot. So the last section there says undeliverable brochures returned to the office, treated as normal. So does anything get entered into the Veris record?
Yes, good point. So that's something that we changed last year, that now, because we get that, that's a good check for, we will flag as undeliverable, and that would put an individual into the inactive status. So that's a good change, cleaning up the voter list.
Inactive, not removed from the list.
Exactly. And they have, before that happens, they have 30 days. We send out a notification. They have 30 days to respond to that notification. Then we get into the substance of the election. Absentee mail requests. As of September 11th, 77,726,000 applications. That includes 61,000. You can see for a normal November election, at this point, we wouldn't have much beyond permanent. But now we have about 16,000, and they're coming in, I think, Cheryl, every day we're getting hundreds of applications.
I checked this morning, it's up to 80,000 total.
Wow. Want to know something, ask Kate. I said, you have the info.
I just am always curious as to how many ballots are gonna hit, because they all come back. Well, they don't all come back, but a lot of them come back.
Now, 4 years ago, we were in the midst of a pandemic, so that made things very challenging. We had 269,000 mail ballots sent out. I don't know how you did it, Cheryl, but we expect this time we'll get more at the satellites. That's really, it seems to have a lot of interest. So we're ready. 4 years ago, we only had government centers as satellite, and you might recall, lines around the block was really something. This time, we have 2 other satellites for 45 days. That's North County and Mount Vernon. So that's an improvement. And here at Government Center, we got additional space. We're gonna be on the main floor in Suite 251, so that's good. We've got twice as many check-ins. Flo and Bill have just done an outstanding job preparing twice as many check-ins, more than twice as many voting booths. So everything you can imagine to prepare for this. Sure, there'll still be lines, but I think it'll be much improved.
Just a reminder, when do the satellites open?
This Friday the 20th.
Friday the 20th.
And we'll also be open Saturday, again, just at those 3 locations. And then we'll be open later, we're legally required to be open the last 2 Saturdays. We'll be open for 3 Saturdays. And we'll have a total of 16 satellites, as we usually do.
It's not just the Saturdays though, all of them open on what,
October 17th
the 17th?
of October.
Now taking us to page 14, some of the what we just said about the satellites. Oh, now the Premier Page Program. Beth, I think the best page program in the nation, is that right?
It is.
We've got over 500 students. Everybody wants to do this, and the great part, for the first time in history, we're not just gonna have pages at the precincts, at the election day polling places, which will be vitally important for things like getting out the constitutional amendment brochures, the bond brochures, answering voter questions, so many things. But we're also gonna have many of them help at the satellites. So that's gonna be helpful, and the price is great, they're free. So that's where it costs $250 for each election officers. Plus, it's just a great thing for them. They love it, and it's a really outstanding program. Takes a bit of work to manage it, but it's well worth it. Logic and accuracy testing, we've told you before about the schedule. We officially started the logic and accuracy testing just a few days ago on Thursday. And the purpose, of course, is to find out if anything's not perfect, if anything's not functioning right. We did find something on Friday. The write-ins were not, they were being tabulated correctly, they were being recorded. We voted write-ins in the test, but at the end of the tape, the results tape, the write-ins, just this switch that had not been clicked on the program. So the write-ins were not printing. So we added Saturday. We told both political parties, told the observers, and so we had testing Saturday, and now we're back on track. And that's for the satellite equipment to be delivered to the satellites. So things are going well. Page 5, election officers. Because it's the presidential election, where we usually have about 2,400 or 2,500 for a November election. We have 3,700 election officers. We've already had over 1,300 new applications. We're prioritizing, trying to get people in the right geographic areas, trying to get party balance. So that's an ongoing process. Training, won't go in through all this, but you can see we're trying to do much more in-person training. Everything in the world is going to online, and we do some of that, but we're trying to have in-person. That's so valuable. Into page 6, we had tabletop exercises. That's how to prepare for emergency situations. Myself, Cheryl, Robbie, and Ford each went to a tabletop exercise in Richmond a couple weeks ago, where they ran through all of the different things that could happen. Then we had our own tabletop exercise here in the office that was region-wide, not just Fairfax County, but throughout Virginia. And those have been very successful. And now the next item, we're gonna have a emergency security meeting with about 60 participants from police, fire, all the different departments that support the election process. That's gonna be this afternoon. FOIAs, we've had 8 new FOIA requests since the last report and 1 NDRA request. Our communication division, thanks to Cheryl, since we lost both of the members of our communications division, both communications division chief Sarah and also Pat Ferguson is no longer with us, she retired. So Cheryl, in addition to everything else she's doing as deputy director, has been leading our communications and outreach program, still trying to get information to the senior centers that's so important. We're going out to new citizen ceremonies, and of course, it's other things like the sample ballot, of course, the communication. And we're doing videos. I shouldn't tell you, but the county executive's next podcast, I may be the participant. He asked me if I've ever watched it. Well, maybe I should. Prepare.
I'm sure they've got a copy downstairs
And if you're watching, I look forward to it. I'm sure he's not. Risk limiting audit, we got some more information about the risk limiting audit that will occur just after the presidential election. Every jurisdiction, well, not every jurisdiction, most jurisdictions will have the risk limiting audit, we certainly will. And there are two types of audits, the ballot polling audit and the batch comparison audit. We don't know for sure if we're gonna have both of them, because the US Senate for the ballot polling audit, the batch comparison audit, where you look at, am I getting this right? You look at an entire precinct. That's gonna be based on, randomly drawn, based on the US House of Representatives. So we have, I think, about a 10% chance that we might participate in that. But more news to follow on that. And then, finally, we had two action items from the last board meeting. One was, information posted under the Governor Youngkin's executive order awareness campaign for election security. So either we were to prepare the information or Elect was to prepare it. We contacted Elect, they said they were preparing it, they provided it to us, they've told us in all jurisdictions to post it conspicuously where you have voter registry in the voter registrar's office. So it is at our front, right at the front door as you come in, you couldn't miss it. So it's posted there. And the second item, policy for referring individuals who are removed from the voter rolls. We prepared a draft policy, which was discussed in the closed session.
Okay, I guess we'll take that up now.
Can I just add one
Yeah,
thing
sure.
on item one? So, what about individuals who register online, which is most of them? They don't go to the registrar's office. What's being done to provide the awareness campaign information so that is most voters nowadays?
We just received this last Friday, so it could make sense to put it on our, it could make very good sense to put it on our website. There was no directive from the left agency.
There was a direct from all, because they posted in the registrar's office.
We're not saying nothing about it online.
Yeah.
Well, if you would entertain putting it on the website, I think it would be a good idea. I mean, I'm not making a
There's
motion.
probably something to that effect already on the website, but we could update it with the latest and greatest from election.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So, okay,
And I don't know if we have, I think they're still working on the policy.
I'm sorry?
The policy was, I'm getting copies for the,
Oh,
we went
through
too
the
quickly.
docket too quickly.
Want to adjourn for
Do
5 minutes?
we have any other items?
well, we can,
See if they're all open new business on the computer.
well, in the meantime, I'll be the lounge act and make an announcement that, the school division tells me that the teachers are gonna work from home. And that's a big deal because they weren't going to, and
On election day.
on election day.
Oh, great.
They were gonna be in the schools, and I spent some time going through some of our schools in the middle of the day, and I found at Dogwood Precinct, I found 5 parking places at noon. At Greenbrier East, I found 7 at noon, and at Greenbrier West, I found 9. Well, I tell you all that, and then another, member, somebody else volunteered to go find others. I tell you why this is such good news that they're gonna be working from home. Our students, our elementary students still do not drive to school. So the elementary schools are still built for parking places for teachers only. And we have a terrible time on the presidential election if there are teachers in schools. We haven't had that for a while. We were a little surprised that they scheduled it because it's now a holiday. But they have, I'm told, changed that to have them to work from home so that we will have parking, because some of those schools, of our 167 schools that we use, 125 of them are working elementary schools. I'm not talking about the closed Walnut Hills and all of those. I'm talking about the actual elementary schools that are working, and probably 25 or 30 of those are dual precincts. And so when you have dual precincts with all those election officials, you take up about 40 spaces in an elementary school of just poll workers, not of election officers, not people outside or anything. So it really gets difficult when there's no place for the voters to park and no place to have curbside voting. So that's settled, and I just wanted to report that as one of my board matters. And now I see the registrar is back.
We have the, if you're ready for it to be distributed,
Okay.
bring it on.
Those are copies, 2 by 2 for all of you. What's the best way? Can I pass them or should I hand them out individually?
I think individually, that way you don't mix it up.
I can do it.
Thank you.
Each, I think.
You're welcome.
I see this one.
So for my part, I would just say, I gave this great thought, didn't take it lightly, considered the attorneys what we could and couldn't do, and so now it's being asked of the electoral board. No, I said, gave this great thought, for all the attorneys, determining what we could and couldn't do legally.
Right?
Thank you.
All right, well then, maybe if I could just
Okay.
open up.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
So we should treat these as two separate motions?
Well, I don't know that this is anything that we need to approve.
Right, that's true. Well, anyway,
Oh, this is the, no,
This is the letter.
Yeah, the letter is the cover letter that will,
well,
it actually does go behind the policy, right?
well then,
Yeah.
how about, I'll move that we accept the policy.
And the cover letter.
Well, we
I think
need a
it's one
motion
motion.
on the policy.
Right, then I move that we accept the policy, as, finalized, after the legal review, which this copy we have in front of us.
I'll second that.
Just gonna mark this.
Discussion?
Yeah, I'll make a point. I just wanted to explain, what we're doing. We're, under this policy, the registrar is going to refer, all individuals who have been removed from the voter roll, pursuant to certain code sections after they've been identified by electors, non-citizens, to the Commonwealth Attorney General and the Attorney General to determine if they have violated elections law. The referral is not a finding that there has been a violation. The statute says complaints or allegations are to be referred. It's up to the law enforcement officers, which is the Commonwealth Attorney and the Attorney General, to investigate and take action as appropriate. It's not part of what this office does or should be doing. And I just want to say that I support this policy because it's a violation of law for non-citizens to register to vote or to vote. And if we come across complaints or allegations or prima facie indications that has happened, it makes sense for us to refer it to law enforcement for review. Otherwise, the law is just a dead letter, and we might as well repeal it because it's not being enforced. And frankly, there's been very little enforcement from what I can see. This is not necessarily going to result in more enforcement. There may be lots of people who are mistakenly identified, or the law enforcement officers may choose not to take action. But I think it's incumbent on this office to follow the code and to refer those individuals for review by the Attorney General, or the Commonwealth Attorney and the Attorney General. So I think this is a very appropriate policy, and that's why I support it.
do you have anything else?
Oh, and if I might, can I address one other point? There's some discussion in the background of this policy about, there have been some discussion about individuals who are non-citizens or identified as potential non-citizens who are on the rolls versus those who have been both on the rolls and have voted. And I think some legal advice we got, and also as a matter of following the governor's executive order, it's appropriate for us to report all names, because it's a violation to be on the roll, not just whether they vote or not. So there's also questions about whether this office can reveal voting history to the Commonwealth's attorney. I'm not sure whether this advice, whether I completely agree with the advice, but I think it's prudent to simply refer all of the names, and that also helps show that we're not engaged in favoritism. It's a very automatic process. So if you're identified as a non-citizen, if you don't provide a confirmation of your citizenship status per the statutory procedure, there's a referral, and it's up to the Commonwealth's attorney and law enforcement to decide what to do at that point. But that's why we're not going to research or call out individuals who may or may not have voted. And I think that actually the governor's order is pretty clear about that it's a violation just to be on the roll. So that's the end of my statement.
If I could just briefly, I also welcome this new policy, for one important reason, that local offices of elections like this one don't have the investigative resources or authorities to do the checking that really needs to be done. And by referring this the way we're doing it, we're passing this over to people who do have resources and authorities if they choose to use them. Thanks.
I have a couple of questions and possibly an amendment. In the background information, all these people we're talking about are currently off the roll, correct?
Correct.
So they will have to re-register to vote in this election. There's a 935 number. This goes back to January 1, 2022, correct? And the 935 in this document is the number that was taken off then, it was referred to us to be removed then, correct?
It's 985, that's through July, and it's 1,006 through September 1st.
It's 1,006 through September 1st.
Yes.
So they're not the same 935, it's more. I'm getting a great many calls from the letters that are going out about people believing, because there's so much out in the ether of things that are going on to remove people from the list, that people that are getting these letters are to remove them think they are a hoax, and they are not, and that is causing people not to respond who are getting them. So we have 1,000 now. So we have been continuing to get them, and we will continue to get them under Elect's direction. We are still getting these names.
In fact, we got quite a few more, almost 300 just in August.
300 in August.
I'm sorry, what did you used to get during the
Well,
month?
About 20 or 30 a month.
It said, yes, 300, I guess, in the first part of September, because the August number here says 28.
Oh, sorry.
I would have thought that somewhere in August was 90 days before the election. But one of the things that it occurs to me that, and I'll have more to say about that a little under my other options, but these people are already off the list. They are not, they cannot vote, the people that we're talking about. They cannot vote in this election unless they re-register and prove their citizenship, correct?
They don't have to prove their citizenship, right?
If they have to register.
They
They have to be citizens.
Yes.
They make a statement.
Yes,
They don't provide
yes.
proof.
Well, I believe people when they say what they are. But nonetheless, I would move an amendment, and that we defer referring these people till December 1 after the election. because right now this office is getting ready for a presidential election, which is as big and complicated as any one we will ever have. And so it's going to take a certain amount of additional work and time away from processing mail ballots and all those things that we do now, and answering phone calls about questions. And so in order not to confuse the electorate anymore and to put, cast a pall over people thinking they are on or off, or the concern that people have had that they have about these letters they're getting, at least I would move to defer until December 1st, which would be after the election and after the RLAs and after we have certified this election. Defer the implementation of this policy until December 1st, and I would so move.
Ready for some discussion?
No, it has to be seconded.
The other thing, if the board would like, I could provide more information about 2006. We have been so busy, we haven't had a chance to do the thorough research, which of course we would do if we sent out letters. But I could tell you in 2006, 130 of them, this is after they were removed, 130 re-registered in Fairfax County. Sorry, 56 re-registered in another county, 8 have died, 6 are inactive in Fairfax County, so they registered but then became inactive, and 1 is inactive in another jurisdiction. So that leaves 828 out of the 1,006 that would potentially be referred. My concern, of course, before we would refer, we have the information right now, but we want to double and triple check it, because the worst thing is to send a letter to somebody and to make a mistake. As elected 2 years ago, they identified 53 individuals that they told us to remove for being non-citizens. We sent out the letters, we removed them. What could be worse than that? You get a letter, it says you're a non-citizen, whoops, it was a mistake. So we had to send another letter. So I don't want to do anything like that, but that's what we're looking at, is 828. I looked at the numbers for this past month. Whatever elected's doing, on August 30th, they identified 229. On August 26th, 40. It's every day. It's some days as much as it was in a month. On the 12th, we got 26. So there's a lot to look at.
Let's be clear, those are the numbers that are coming in that have to get the additional letters sent out, not the work that will have to be done to refer anytime before the election, these people. So that's why my motion.
And it's in the policy that everyone got. It's a great concern to me, but we followed the rules. That an individual, to be clear, the 14 days that somebody has to return that notice starts when we print it. So that includes the time that it takes to get to the individual, the time for them to complete it, the time to get it back through the post office. If you're on vacation, you're probably out of luck.
Let me ask a question about the work. Correct me if I'm wrong, at least this office doesn't have to formally take you off the list when we get a letter back. And as a matter of fact, I think it's correct that we have to keep you on. Doesn't the computer, as it were, automatically take you off after 10 days? We have no intervention in that. So that's one thing that we don't have to worry about, but nonetheless, it's also pretty brutal because it's the computer that actually does it. It sounds like system to me, but it just actually does it. Is that correct?
That's correct. And for where I'm at, just the voter list, that's my responsibility. To have a clean voter list and not have a single non-citizen or somebody who shouldn't be on the voter list. I can't think of something more important except that somebody can't vote if they're not legally entitled. But then trying to balance that with to not accuse somebody of something that's not accurate.
Well,
but these people have been removed.
Okay, so.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay.
I have a motion on the floor that has not been seconded.
Right, I was gonna explain why I'm not seconding it, but.
You don't have to.
Okay.
It dies for lack of a second.
All right.
Okay. Moving on, we have a motion on the floor then to adopt the policy, which I assume we mean to go into effect immediately.
Correct.
Yes.
This motion.
Okay. All those in the favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Oppose, and the chair votes no. Okay. We are now down to Electoral board reports.
But still under business, I just want to mention personally that I'm glad that the registrar is taking this action. He's sending in his letter. I don't think the letter itself needs to vote, but because it falls under the policy.
Yes, I'm in agreement with the cover letter.
Okay, anything else from the registrar? New business. Well, no, electoral board reports. Mr. Vice Chairman.
I have nothing further to report.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Well, I do, and I don't have anybody to refer it to, but I just want to comment on kind of what we've heard in light of, I don't know what the solution is, and I would ask us to think about it. We have, as we've discussed here, I thought that the rule of systematically referring people, removing people from the polls under federal law was 90 days. And so I was surprised when I looked back to read the minutes of the meeting of August and discovered that 90 days preceding the election would have been the first week in August, and we're still removing people from the rolls. And so we hopefully got an answer, because it seemed to me that that we shouldn't be doing that there should be a hiatus in that, in the same way you can't do NCOA mailings, which is systematic. I think, and I'm not a lawyer, that the rule on what you can't do is have systematic removals. But the difficulty that I see here is that the office has said, elect has said, that it's not systematic, it's a correction in the record. I always thought a correction in the record was how you spelled methvessel if you got it wrong, and everyone does, or how you got the wrong address on a voter record, or those kinds of things. They are saying that this is a correction to the record. To me, it seems to be a removal, not a correction. And it looks possibly like over the years, because DMV, it's almost like the law has not caught up with the process. And we live in times when the processes have been automated or systematic, when they didn't used to be. When you discovered that people weren't citizens, you did that sort of one at a time. This is kind of a mass removal and of automatic names, and so it seems like that the change of process that the law has not caught up with the change in process. I just say that because this is, I think, the first time we've seen this happen in a very long time in this kind of large numbers, many of whom come from DMV, and DMV is called out in the handbook as one of those specific things on how you deal with them. But this is the first time with this automatic removal that we've seen this hiatus not take effect. And so I don't know what we can do about that. Elect has said that it is a correction to the record. So that's my observation about sometimes mechanization or systematic things overtaking events. Any other?
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments. Number one, this email.
He is a lawyer.
Well, the email has, about this issue has cross-references, don't know what those say, so I can't really comment on this email. But I have heard that the 90-day prohibition doesn't apply to non-citizens voting, because there's no grace period for being illegally on the voter roll. Also, I have heard, and I have not investigated this, we could ask our attorney, but that a lot of that rule under the Motor Voter Act, which you're referring to about the 90 days, I read does not apply to states that allow same-day registration on voting day. which is the case in Virginia. I don't,
Thank goodness.
I have not investigated that.
And I have not investigated.
But that's a new, the same-day voter registration in Virginia is relatively new, so it may actually negate that 90-day rule.
And that's another overtaking, because DMV reporting directly this way, and DMV reporting, people who have not who just didn't affirm their citizenship, reporting people who said nothing at all, is also relatively new. And so, as with DMV, so yes, we need to find out.
I'm sorry, you said DMV reporting directly?
This stuff comes from DMV, and I
Right, but it's
don't.
not direct. It goes
Pretty
to
much,
elect,
I
not
don't
to
think
us.
elect doesn't review, to my understanding, whether or not they said nothing. DMV refers people if you have to have affirmatively checked, yes, you're a citizen. In other words, if you miss the form altogether, which apparently thousands of people do, and check nothing, we take those people off the rolls too.
I don't.
And my point is just, I agree, we don't know exactly, understand what
Exactly.
was on between DMV and elect, but
There's
DMV
no
information
vetting.
does not come directly to this body.
The other thing I would say about that is, it is incredibly difficult to figure out what is actually going on out there. But I will say that the statute has required the DMV to provide information. It's not just people who check the wrong box on the federal roll. It's provide information about people who get a driver privilege card, which by definition, they are affirming under oath that they are not citizens. So those people should not be on the voting roll, because they themselves have said under oath, I'm not a citizen. That's the driver privilege card. In addition, there's the bucket of people who have a legal presence here, who get a special license, but should also not be on the voter rolls. And the statute has required the DMV to send that information to elect for a long time. I think they've just started doing it in recent times.
Okay. Anything else? Do we need to set another meeting? Or are we done for the year? No, we have to have the pre-election meeting.
When would we can set the
Do we
exact
need-
date later.
You mean October?
Or, yeah, no,
Sure.
late in October,
I know, we can
okay,
still talk
we
about
have
it. We-
public comment.
Oh, yeah.
So you can think
Thanks,
about that.
Ben.
The public is here, so we'll allow them to comment. Do we have people signed up? Do we have anybody online?
I did not see where we sign up for public.
Oh, was there a sign up? Who has public comment? Who wants in the
There's no
room?
one online with a comment
I'll
yet.
start with Donna.
Yes, thank you. My name is Donna Rostand. I'm General Counsel for the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you for what I understand is 3 minutes. I have a couple of questions based on what the Republican members of the Board of Election just voted for, and that is, number one, how do we get a list of those persons who you have decided are not citizens of Fairfax County, the 900 or so? How do we get a list of those persons?
We didn't decide that anyone wasn't a citizen.
How do we get a list of those persons? I only have 3 minutes, so I just want to keep my comment.
You want a list of
Yeah.
who we're referring. How do you get a list?
It will be foyable after we.
Okay.
It will be for you.
And what specific language should one use to get that list, so that you know exactly what it is that we're asking for?
If you put in for, if you request the list of individuals who were referred to the Commonwealth Attorney for possible non-citizen
And-
status.
And is that the 900 people in Fairfax
And
County?
the Attorney General,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to make sure we have the correct language, that's all, so that we don't have
And I
a
should
delay.
just say,
in
for
getting
any FOIA request, if it's not clear, if we have questions, we would follow up, but that takes, we don't wanna have the back and forth, so if you say something like that, and there are 2 parts, we need to go back to the 800, I think it's just over 828, but then also we'll be doing this on a regular basis going forward.
Okay, great,
And
thank
you
you.
can only FOIA something that already exists, so right now, there's nothing that exists, so if you turn in a FOIA today, we'd say we have no responsive documents, because we haven't done it yet.
Right. I have just maybe a process question, and that is that if, for example, someone who's on this list gets the mail from you and they check their voter registration and see that if they check their voter registration at the point that they get the mail, will it indicate that they are registered to vote? Then they send their card back and say, I am a citizen, but the card doesn't make it back in 14 days. What will happen at that point? They'll be removed from the roll?
Yes, as Kate said earlier, it's an automatic process.
Okay, so if that card doesn't come back from the mail, which the clock, as I understand it, starts running from when you print that notice, not when it goes in the mail, okay? Because as a lawyer, I get a lot of mail, as you can imagine, and the mail is horrifically delayed for whatever reason, but it is not unusual for us to get mail that's over 2 weeks upon receipt in our office. But if I'm a voter, and I think that I check my voter status and it says that I'm registered to vote, but yet I send the card back and it doesn't get there, I would no longer be on the rolls, and you would consider me a non-citizen. Is that
Well, you would
correct?
be removed, and then you could, that individual could
Okay.
re-register at any point.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was the case.
Megan?
I have one other I just have a few other comments that I'd like to add for the record. If you just, I,
Put them in writing to
okay,
us.
well, I'd like to add these documents about the fallacy of non-citizen
Okay.
voting. There are 6 of them, and I'd like to include those in the record.
Okay. Megan?
Megan Challenger, Chair of the Voter Protection Committee for the Fairfax County Democrats. Thanks. So as we know, non-citizen voting is extremely rare. Even if we drill down on the numbers that we've looked at here, it's less than 50 over several years. I just want to highlight that this attempt by Republicans to raise a false flag is simply a distraction and an attempt to undermine confidence in our elections and to raise fear and anger toward immigrants. It's also simply a waste of important resources while we're administering an election. Overwhelming these individuals identified as potential non-citizens simply made an administrative error. These are eligible voters who are bad at paperwork, not guilty of a crime. The Electoral Board should be nonpartisan with the goal of advocating for and ensuring free and fair elections. Decisions should be based on actual evidence, not fantasies that push a political narrative. Many neighboring jurisdictions have rejected similar measures. Arlington, Loudoun, King William, Chesterfield County Electoral Boards all have rejected these partisan attempts to waste valuable resources for a non-existent problem. Voting begins in 4 days in Fairfax County. Creating new operating procedures is a waste of resources. Our registrar and our election office needs to focus on election administration. Additionally, I just want to note that I'm here as chair for the Fairfax County Democrats Voter Protection Committee, but in my private life, I am a victim rights attorney. And I was just at a conference last Thursday, and many Commonwealth's attorneys from Virginia were commenting on how under-resourced their offices are and how they simply don't have enough prosecutors to prosecute violent crime in the state of Virginia. So flooding Commonwealth's attorneys' offices with 1,000 people who have seemingly committed an administrative error is simply a waste of not only the registrar's resource, but prosecutorial resources that could be prosecuting violent crime in Virginia.
Thank you. Anyone else? Greg?
Greg Brandon, FCBC. First off, I'd like to commend Mr. Allen and his professional team during the logic and accuracy testing, which was effective, efficient, and thorough, that I observed for 2 days. I went because I hadn't been for 7 or 8 years, and I wanted to see the new procedures. Everything was great. Now, next year I renew my driver's license, and so there's going to be some questions on that little screen that I have to answer. And of course, I'll be getting into the star thing and showing my, my passport and all that stuff. But is there a question on there that says, do you want to be a registered voter? And of course, I'm already a registered voter. And so do I check that again?
That is the problem. That's one of the problems. I don't know exactly what happens. I think the answer is no, you shouldn't check it again because you're already a registered voter.
Well, I don't want to screw it up.
We'll find out.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Tangs, FCRC. I have a question about, in our training of poll watchers, we talk about the driver privilege card. Could someone describe how the Office of Elections and their EOs and chiefs will be handling voters or potential voters who come in and they present a driver privilege card as their means of ID? What will happen to that person when he approaches the
We have
vote?
Ravi, and first I just say, unfortunately, the way they design these, if I were designing it, the driver privilege card would look different. That is not the case. It looks like a driver's license, which makes no sense. Ravi, would that lead in? What can you say?
Yeah, sure. So the procedures for handling driver privilege cards are very similar to past elections. If ID doesn't scan, then the election officer will refer the issue to the chief election officer, and they're going to check for 3 elements on the DMV issued ID. They're going to check to see if it says federal limits apply at the top right, if it says 9 under restrictions at the bottom, and if it says limited duration on the back of the ID. And if it meets all 3 of those criteria, then based on the acceptable ID chart from the Virginia Department of Elections, the election officer will let the voter know that that is not an acceptable ID for voting purposes. Then according to the law, the voter has the option of providing a different ID or signing an ID confirmation statement.
But isn't the presentation of a driver privilege card evidence that the person is a non-citizen, if that's what he's using?
So no, so the way the Virginia Department of Elections is categorized IDs, you have a category of IDs that are all grouped together: limited duration licenses, driver privilege cards, and those versions of driver's permits essentially. Of that grouping of IDs, some of them could potentially be used by someone who is here, who's a non-citizen, who has legal presence here in Virginia. So it doesn't immediately mean that they, pardon me, if they present one of those IDs, then what happens is the election officer reviews it, determines if it's an ID eligible for voting, and then refers it to the chief.
Can I just add something? Someone with a driver's privilege card is a legal.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that the person shouldn't be in the country, I just mean.
Right. What I'm saying is they could become a naturalized citizen and continue to keep their car because it doesn't expire for another 4 years or whatever. So they can continue to drive on that driver's license.
Are you talking about a legal presence card?
Right,
Or-
a legal,
But that's
legal.
different than a
If
driver.
they're legally,
There's 2 buckets.
right, but if they're
There's
here legally and they have that's a driver privilege card?
No.
A limited duration license.
That's,
Right, well, they could become a citizen, become a naturalized
No,
citizen.
but I'm
and keep
speaking
their card.
specifically about a driver privilege card,
Oh,
which is
okay.
issued only to non-citizens. So-
non-citizens without a legal presence. They're here unlawfully. They affirm that they are not citizens, so they don't qualify for a legal presence driver's license. They get a driver's privilege card. So it's 3 buckets at the DMV, not 2.
And unfortunately, the DMV's made it very challenging for us by making these IDs the exact same. The General Assembly in 2020 prescribed that way in the code, that these IDs should be exactly identical.
Well, I think the interesting point being raised was, that's actually evidence of a non-citizen attempting to vote illegally. If they present that card to,
Yes, Christine.
Yes, so raising the naturalization change of status of a legal presence card, which they have, I have 2 questions about that. One, why or how do you receive information, and how frequently, on the status change of somebody who's just become naturalized, so that you can add that into Veris or any other database that you use? If they just became naturalized, so
Yes,
they're
but-
still using that old card, but do you have a way to look and see that they have become naturalized in your database?
But they would not be registered, they would have to, are you suggesting that they are registered?
somehow they must have registered.
Somehow, I'm saying they would have registered in this situation, right? They would be registered
So
and,
this would be an SDR request?
fine. How do you receive naturalization data? Let's just make it that simple.
I don't think, Eric, I don't think this office receives naturalization data. The only data you get is from elect, right?
That's right.
So I guess the question is, does elect?
Does elect get naturalization data to your knowledge? Okay. Second, does the no ink poll pad scan, assuming, let's say the election officer makes a mistake and doesn't detect it, will the no ink poll pad scan that legal presence card or driver privilege card? We've got two different kinds. Or will it not scan it as a regular driver's license? Will the knowing poll pad itself detect the difference?
So it's something we're working with now to determine the correct answer to make sure we can answer that question definitively and conclusively.
I'm sorry, you
We're
don't
working
know
with
yet?
vendors to answer that question definitively. Our general understanding to date has been that driver's licenses are what are scanned on the poll pads.
That, I'm sorry.
Rob, I couldn't hear you.
No, no one can hear you.
Sure.
Please speak more slowly and a little louder if you would.
Of course. The poll pads are designed to scan driver's licenses. We received information from knowing that they scan driver's licenses, and that's what our policies and procedures have been based upon. And if we receive additional information, we can provide support to that.
Have you ever tested a driver privilege card or a limited legal presence card on the knowing poll pad to see if it scans?
We don't have the driver privilege cards to be able to test that.
So the answer is no. Yeah,
Not today.
yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we've got
Any other things to come before the board?
Mr. Spitz, I think, has a comment.
I'm sorry?
Steve Spitz, online.
Steve Spitz.
Yes, I have a question for the registrar and or his staff, and that's just a factual question. For those people who get this driver's license, who are green card holders, and then obviously non-citizens at the time they get the driver's license, what do you know about how many of the people that are on the list that you have, this 900 or 1,000 people, later became citizens and then legally registered to vote? Do you know, have you checked, do you have data on how many people on this list may have, when they got the driver's license, been non-citizen, but subsequently became citizens and legally registered to vote?
Steve, I think the question is, have people who were earlier taken off and become citizens and registered to vote? I think that's the question. Do we know how many of those there are on the list? I think the answer is going to be, but I'm not sure. The question is, those people would be in the number that have re-registered. That would be the only way we would know that, correct?
The question is confusing to me because it started with about the driver's license. I think it was about limited duration. Those are individuals that have green card, but then that's a whole separate issue. That's just a proof of identification. Separately, I think part of the question was about if a person is not a citizen, but then later they become a citizen. Well, we wouldn't know because when a person gets flagged by elect and they get sent this letter in 14 days, they may have made a mistake, or they could truly be a non-citizen. We have no way, there's nothing at all that would.
But part of his question was also people who then registered
Sure.
as citizens, and if they did register, they would have appeared in Miyares as registered.
Yes.
And
So they would
so they
know.
wouldn't be on this list of 900.
Yes, correct. If they'd be a registered voter, yeah.
Exactly.
Maria Varel.
Hi there, thank you. I have been a citizenship teacher for over 10 years, and I would just point out that there are frequent naturalization ceremony, at the naturalization ceremony, there are voter registrations that are conducted. Between now and the election is over 45 days, I assume there will be more people naturalized and registered. And I have a concern that your system is not being notified in a timely manner that somebody is a citizen and would treat them as non-citizen. Just a point. Second, the 14 days. I'd like to understand, why are you choosing a 14-day window when you're saying it's really not an adequate time? It's from the time it's printed to the time a person has to get an answer in.
It's in code. It's in the code of Virginia. It's the law.
Okay, and then the third is there any other reason other than DMV coordination with the proper systems that people are being told they're no longer citizens and they're not a citizen and therefore can't vote? Is there any other reason, any other way a person gets on this list?
I think SAVE But that comes through, elect. Elect also uses save, and I've forgotten systematic something or another,
Systematic alien verification.
yeah. But that also comes through elect.
Entitlements.
It's a federal feed of
Yeah.
information that goes to elect, not to us, which
When those
says,
come.
these are people who are not citizens. The feds know that in various ways, like for instance, when they apply for benefits.
Okay, super, thank you.
All right.
One last one.
Christine.
Yeah, representing the Fairfax Republican Committee, we would like to commend the board for taking this action. We would like to commend the registrar and his office for what we consider to be a prudent and appropriate and fair and efficacious decision. One that also represents the majority of the opinions of American citizens, not just in Fairfax, but across the country, as shown in polling after poll after poll, survey after survey after survey. So thank you for acting on something that is of great concern, not just to the citizens of Fairfax, but nationwide.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Robbie?
I just had one last thing on the driver pledge cards. We spoke with representatives from Elect recently about this. We would welcome consistent guidance from Elect for all localities to be able to handle this correctly. We want to handle it correctly. I've actually spoken with many of my colleagues in other jurisdictions who handle the training and preparation of election officers. I reviewed a lot of their training materials from many other jurisdictions. I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction that's taken up the issue of driver pledge cards in any way and try to prepare their election officers for that. They just refer to the acceptable ID chart from Elect and leave it to their election officers to figure out. We want to handle it correctly, and we would welcome guidance from Elect on that.
Absolutely.
We
Okay.
understand that a very peaceful thing, perhaps.
Okay. Is there a motion do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Okay.